we go. All right. So the two critical things that I would like to emphasize with learning how to write well is the fact that it's a lifelong process. You don't take a class, graduate, and then feel empowered that you can write really anything in terms of like scientific paper or a grant or some other major research contribution. So in this context, I really, in case if you really feel that you need to have a boost in the area of scientific writing, I would certainly recommend getting a textbook. You can, in my case, I basically decided to like go on Amazon and type scientific writing and see what happens. You can Google it on Amazon and you can find quite a few books. I believe most of them will be quite good. What I also recommend is look at the ratings, reviews, and so on and so forth. You don't have to get the most expensive and most popular book. You just need to get something that's going to get you off the ground. The second thing that I'd like to emphasize in terms of...
Ed, can I break in there?
Sure, please.
I want to mention also that I'm trying to get a university-wide subscription to the ACS Guide to Scholarly Writing, and that's in the works. That should be available to us, I think, in the next week or so. So we can start using that as a guide for scientific writing, but because it's not available to you unless you have an ACS membership at this point, we decided not to emphasize it yet, but it looks like a really great resource. So we'll try to incorporate that once it's available to all of you through Wayne State. Okay, thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Really appreciate it. And the second big concept in scientific writing is really practice, practice, and practice. Just like Mary Kay was emphasizing that you really need to read scientific papers and really trying to boil down the content of these papers to the key bullet points, the same goes for scientific writing. Because you chose a career as a PhD, technical writing will most likely be a very significant part of your future job, regardless of where you're going to end up, whether you're going to go to academia, industry, consulting, especially consulting. And again, what I'd like to emphasize is you really need to practice. And this course, in my opinion, is a very good stimulation for you to develop this habit of writing on an everyday basis. So remember, to develop a habit, it takes like a whole month. So what I hope is going to happen in this class is you will be pseudo-forced to develop this habit. My advice about your writing that you choose to do on an everyday basis, once we're done with this class, is be passionate about what you write. That's the most important. Because in case if you don't feel passionate, it will be very difficult to force yourself to write that page of writing, especially if you're trying to perfect your skills. And choose whatever you feel comfortable doing. Maybe it's going to be a lab report that you would like to polish, spend some time and make a nice piece of writing out of it, or summary of your previous results or design of your future experiments, regardless of what you can find. But you have to engage in active development of polished scientific writing. So with this, I'd like to cover a few very basic topics relevant to grant preparation. And some of these topics, would be quite simple, but still, it's very important to remind us all of what these essential steps are. So when we are writing grant preparation, the quality of writing matters a great deal. If you're going to have poor writing, it will definitely upset the reviewers, seeing all kinds of typos, inconsistencies, and errors. So a real solution for any piece of scientific writing is really to proofread, perhaps several times. So, it's okay to proofread the second time. The goal is when you're proofreading and finally not seeing any grammar errors or spelling errors, that's the time when you really should stop, finish proofreading. When you're preparing scientific text, whether it's a grant preparation or a manuscript, use action word to make the reviewer or reader in general to be more enthusiastic about your work. Use words such as innovative, original in case if it's really original, modern, ambitious or ambitions. However, do not oversell your work. In other words, don't try to claim something being extremely super novel as far as the technique, in case if you're trying to perfect or apply it to one particular example. So not overselling is also an important aspect. Keep in mind that lexicon of writing is significantly larger than the lexicon of speaking. So consequently, don't write like you talk, and conversely, uh, when you talk, don't write what you. I'm sorry, don't read what you wrote, because this is going to apply very poorly. So casual language sounds really unprofessional in terms of scientific writing. So in case if you're working on anything really, whether this is summary of the results, manuscript, or especially the grant proposal, use more formal language in your scientific writing. With respect to English, especially if English, if English is your second language, such as, for example, for myself, keep in mind that English is a very global language. So you really need to invest your time and effort to perfect your English writing skills in the context of this class, because it's a valuable asset in the global economy. You need to remember that, the obvious things. English is the primary language of many countries, such as the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand. But you also don't need to forget that English is a secondary language of many countries, like United Arab Emirates. If you ever dream of landing a job in one of those countries, you better know how to write in English too. So that's quite an asset. Use American English, not British English, for proposal writing or to the US agencies. And also keep in mind that you need to use American English when you're writing, for example, a manuscript to most of the journals as well. So for example, on Yuan Tekimi, would really like to see American English, not British English. So the examples here is, don't use extra letters, for example, extra letter U in the word of color, or use the proper spelling for the word center. Use letter Z instead of, for example, letter S. So, one of my favorite words is polarization or hyperpolarization. So in British English, it would be polarization. Sounds the same, but the spelling is different. So this is important because the way you're going to deliver your proposal to the reader will matter. The next part of what I would like to cover are the Latin abbreviations. We use them quite a bit, and I will emphasize again a little bit later why. So these abbreviations are rather short, and you really need to develop the knowledge of their meaning and pronunciation as well. So for example, etc. Means and so on. Itali means and others, and so on and so forth. So review these, memorize them, because you will need them. You will encounter them throughout your career. The next important part, which I cannot really overemphasize, is how you deliver your writing. It has to be concise, and you need to use exact use of words in writing or speech. So in writing. So in the context of writing, longer is absolutely not better. So sometimes you are given assignments, please write 1 page or write half a page. So in the context of this class, when you will be experiencing page limitations in your homework assignments, this does not mean that you really need to fill 1 page and be done with this. But this means you have this limit of what you can put, and you really need to do your best to put all the information content that you really want to deliver. So during today's lecture, we'll do one practice exercise when we will try to write a summary of the proposal, and we'll need to make it work for 30 lines. So this will be our limitation. So there are, in the context of grant proposals, as I would like to mention, there are these limitations that we have to work around. In case if you exceed this limitation, one of these limitations, your proposal will be definitely not reviewed. This is constantly being checked, page margins, font sizes, so on and so forth. So the funding agencies are very strict because they're trying to be fair to every applicant. Long sentences confuse the reader at best. So you really would like to keep your sentences short. Scientific writing is not creative writing. There is a typo in my slide. What this means is you should really try to avoid flowery sentences and really try to stay professional and concise in your writing. Concise writing is required in the context of scientific writing. So, for example, in case if you can pack your sentence in 12 words, do that. Don't make it long, because space is precious. Do not use sentences more than 3 lines long, period, because biologically we have a very short attention span. So by the time the reader will finish reading your very long sentence, he or she will forget what you were trying to explain or what you started with. And this is not good for your application. Do use images and figures where possible. So this is definitely something important. Why? Because biologically we have humongous visual cortex, so we're predisposed to process images significantly better than words. So again, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Ideally, if you have a video, but it's impossible for us to stick a video in our applications, a video would be worth of million of words. So again, making proper figures and using the figures is very powerful in the context of grant applications, because space is precious and you can pack more meaning, more information content using the figures. A good figure can evade quite a bit of text, so keep that in mind. It's a great way to save on space. A figure can explain complex tables significantly better. So especially if you have something which is complex, it's really advantageous to boil it down to a very cool figure. And really, sometimes in my experience, it's easier to develop a really powerful figure because it's just can deliver it can potentially deliver your message significantly better. So on the other end of the spectrum, don't try to pack your grant application with too many figures, because this could be counterproductive. In this case, you will end up with text just being a glue for your figures. Definitely avoid that. The pictures describe generally what you're talking about, and it would be next to impossible for us chemists to describe our structures, right? So this is what you put on your figures. You put structures, you put your design of study or instrumentation, you provide the description of the workflow. So a critical element when you're working on the figures, saving the figure and inserting the figure in Word documents, is make sure the figures will be eventually legible. Conversely, make sure to avoid that your figures don't have a huge amount of white space. This is not a good practice. So there is a fine balance of how we develop a powerful figure. The emphasis here in the context of this class is just make sure to use them when appropriately. And again, from the human psychology and biology, we prefer, and we digest pictures better than words. So we'll do a very quick exercise here. I'd really like you to look at this slide. And I bet most of you look at the figure first before reading the words. And this is exactly what I'm trying to deliver as far as my message. We as humans, we're predisposed to look at the images, process the images significantly faster. And again, from a different, you can look at it from a different angle. You can also look at it from how much time did it take you to look at the figure and get the idea of what this figure was trying to talk, compared to the time required to read the title and read the bottom of the slide where additional text was posted. So this should really give you a perspective of how impactful and powerful figures compared to the text. So another point that I'd like to mention here is the descriptive explanation that we prefer to use in our grant application. So what we mean by that is the text that you're trying to draft, in some parts of the grant application, especially at the point of the writing technical details, it really needs to be very descriptive and down to a point. Another point that I would like to emphasize with this long text, I'd really like you not to read it, besides the first sentence, is really to emphasize how long this text is here. And then if you look at this image captures exactly the same thing as you have for this description. Yet it's quite powerful because you can see how to proceed with respect to the path for a subject to go through a maze. So the key points here is in the scientific texts, we use descriptive explanations, and figures are still very powerful, and they can save you a considerable amount of space in your grant application. The least but not the last is to discuss the citations. So citations is effectively the acknowledgement of the prior record of accomplishment either by you, the author of the application, or by others working in this field. And typically what we do with manuscripts and grant applications, we insert citations appropriately to highlight relevant background, similar research results, work that this proposal on the manuscript is based on. This may include your work too. So what we mean by appropriate citations, so let's say you're writing a sentence, the material was synthesized as reported previously, ta-da, here you put your reference, which in ACS would be a number. Here you're trying to describe a person who did something, and you stick that reference number is there. So cite as many relevant citations as needed. The citations take almost no space in the sections of the manuscript or proposals due to the clever formatting. References I never counted towards the page limit of the grant applications, and they're frequently not counted towards the page or word limit in the manuscripts too. So most typical grant proposal will have between 30 to 100 references. Some proposals may have more. So most of my large proposals will have significantly more citations. Don't worry about putting too many, but I definitely suggest not to go over the border of citing hundreds and hundreds of publications. This is not going to be helpful. However, citing too few is going to be problematic because it means one of the two things. It's either the PI is not proficient in the field or didn't bother to review the literature, or the topic is completely new, which rarely happens. So you may get an idea of what's going to happen when your application is going to be reviewed. So this is kind of captures the most of the content of my mini presentation for today, and I would really like to highlight the additional resources that you should use to improve your writing skills. So the first resource that I would like to highlight is the University of Purdue resource. So please follow this link and go through some of these rules in case if you are not familiar with them, or if you would like to remind yourself of the proper writing. Another resource that I really liked is this humorously and self-contradictory rules of writing, which I learned from Claudio Verani and Thomas Linz, who were teaching this course earlier, previously. And please review these rules. I really enjoy them. These are the rules developed by a very famous American author, columnist, and journalist, William Safire. And here in this presentation, which I'm not going to be reviewing right now, I strongly suggest to go and digest each one of them. They're quite powerful. This is kind of like a boiled down knowledge of his experience and his career. So there are approximately 36 rules. I do strongly suggest for you to review them, laugh, enjoy, and so on. So with this,